Hello everyone, my name is Jimmy, and today we have another interesting story. I won't keep you. Let's get started. Story 1 from user Kyoto Kinuku. I attended, but thankfully didn't join in the end. I had just moved to Korea at 18YO and didn't really know anyone. I was just starting to learn Korean, conversational but still low level, and didn't really have a lot of friends yet. Someone invited me to go to church with them, and they were really nice and I wanted to meet people. I had a lot of fun at this church. The people would take me out to eat, help me with Korean, and even help me with my homework to test prep. It was 100% the nicest church I've ever visited, and I felt like I had a place to fit in now. This is how they suck people in. Also, there was a female pastor who was super hot and would sometimes let people, always younger men, stay with her if they needed a place. I always wondered if this was an intentional tactic to try to lure more young men in, because this specific church, one location of many, seemed to only go after men. Eventually, they started pressuring me to make myself unhealthy, saying that there was a balance between physical and spiritual strength. I love bodybuilding, so me being physically strong was an issue. They were pressuring me to lose muscle and try to make myself sick if possible, to make my body as weak as possible. They said if I didn't, my soul would grow restless and crawl out of my mouth when I was asleep. I repeatedly said I wasn't interested, but wanted to continue attending this church. This was not acceptable at all. They strongly pressured me to start making myself sick. I stopped going to the church, and they waited outside of my school for me and followed me around for what seems like a couple months. They knew my class schedule and were always outside trying to talk to me. Eventually, in the end, they backed off, and I never heard from them again. Another guy from the church also got creeped out and left, and we're still good friends to this day. Story 2 from user Sleeping Banana 86. I was born into Scientology. Even though I internally questioned a lot when I was younger, I had learned very early on not to actually question anything. My aha moment was when I was ready to go on to the next step, and one of the other members, who, not so surprisingly, is also an ex-member now, asked me why I was planning on doing what I was doing, and my answer was, it's what's expected of me. I went home and really thought about what I wanted and realized I didn't actually agree with most things in Scientology. I started to process to leave shortly after. I had to leave the right way, since my dad and sister are still very involved, and I don't want to lose them from my life. Edit. So I wrote this comment and went to bed thinking I would get a few votes, but not so many questions. So I'll answer the what is the right way one here, and as many individual as I can over the course of the day. Sorry to leave you guys hanging. Now, this all happened 15 years ago, so I'll do the best I can, but there is some info I just don't remember, or remember incorrectly. So leaving the right way depends on where you are within Scientology. There is public, who go in, donate, take courses, go to events, but are under no contractual obligation. Class 5 org staff, the place most public go to get their services done, and those on staff work there. It's more like glorified volunteerism. You are typically under either a 205-year or a 5-year contract, and you're expected to work at least 40 hours a week. When I was a senior in HS and told them I couldn't work all those hours, and it was insane the amount of pressure I had put on me to drop out of HS to go work for them full-time. And by full-time, I mean MF 910, SAT and Sun 96. And there would be events for the public on a lot of Saturday nights that would go until past 11. I did not drop out of school, but it was a point of contention the entire time I was there. The Sea Org. This is the highest level of commitment within Scientology. And within it, there are more levels, but I don't know much about it since I was never in. I do know that you have to sign a billion-year contract, you get housed and fed on their dime, but the rooms are essentially closets with a bed and a dresser, no real personal space, and would sometimes make about $50 a week for working 80+ hours a week. You didn't really get time off. If you were there, you were expected to be available for anything since you really had no other obligations. So how I left? As I stated above, I was on staff at a Class 5 org, and when you do that, you don't pay for any services you get. So I had finished one of my services and was talking about what the next one I was going to do was when one of the other staff members asked me why I was choosing the one I did, and essentially I had already started down one of several different paths. So my answer was basically, it's what's expected of me. When I said that, he told me to go home and think about what I had said. I did think about it, and over the next few weeks, started opening my eyes to things that were happening that I didn't agree with. I realized that I really wasn't happy, and that wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I decided I was done and was going to break my staff contract. I don't remember who I told, but they started the ball rolling right away. You need to have a leaving staff sec check, basically a super intense, very expensive exit interview that takes days or even weeks to complete. Once that is complete, you're supposed to essentially make amends with anyone you feel you have wronged by leaving. Then, to get back in good standing, you have to pay your free loader debt. So any of those services I told you were free while you were on staff? Well, now that you're off of staff, you have to pay back the org for them. And it can be thousands and thousands of dollars. My dad paid for my sec check because I said I wasn't spending any money on them, and he wanted me to be in good standing. I had some money saved up from when my mom had passed away and used that to pay off my free loader debt. Trust me, I wish I hadn't done that. But then after that, I essentially make sure to not say anything bad about Scientology around members I know are active. As far as my dad is concerned, I still think highly of SCN, but that it just isn't for me. I think my sister knows better, but we just don't talk about it. I've been out for just about 15 years at this point, and I still get mail, I still get phone calls. It is still awkward when I see Scientologists I used to be close with, but I am much happier now. I love my life that I have made for myself. Most of the stories you hear of people escaping and needing to hide ECT are from the Sea Org. I really don't have experience with that to know how difficult it must have been for those people. I will say that I have watched most of the Leah Remini show, and most of the stories do not seem made up or exaggerated to me. I can see how a lot of them would have really happened, and it's extremely unfortunate that others don't see the abuses happening right under their nose. Story 3 from user Matike. I've talked about this before on Reddit and was surprised because so many people also went to these schools, but had no idea. See, the CDU boarding schools were founded by a high-ranking Synanon member named Mel Wasserman. If you guys don't know what Synanon is, here you go. There's about a dozen of these schools and they are still open. Edit. Here's the school's wiki. I went to Boulder Creek Academy, 2001-2003. They kept all the teachings, but dumbed them down for kids. Every few months, we would go through a workshop called Profeats, where they would do weird things like make one person sit on a mattress in the middle of the room and have the rest of us pretend like it was a life raft. And you have to scream out all of the reasons you have to live and beg for your life. Staff would walk around going, you live, you die, pretty much all down to favoritism. If you get picked, you get on the life raft. If you don't, you drown. Which was a little touchy for me because my older brother had just died from drowning less than 3 years earlier, but I had to act it out regardless, otherwise I would fail the Profit and I would be pushed back, and then I would be there another 3 months until the next one rolls around. Also, sleep deprivation was a key part. The last workshop was 7 days, and the whole time you have to refer to yourself as me. I don't know how to explain this, but pretty much if you told a staff that you didn't want to do something, they'd be like, that's right, I doesn't want to do this, but your me does. This was right before they dropped you off at a mall. Keep in mind, we were all kids who were in the middle of nowhere in Idaho, who have been away from the world for almost 3 years. And you had to 1, buy someone food, 2, get someone's address, 3, talk to someone of the opposite sleep and some other trash, but you couldn't tell other people why you were doing it. Think about that next time you're in a mall, if anyone even goes to malls anymore. You would have approached random strangers and do that after being shut away for almost 3 years. When you graduate that Profit Summit, the whole school, about 60 kids at one time, gathers round the main room in the house. They play this song, and the kids walk one by one with a rose and walk through the crowd and touch their hands and cry, and Jesus Christ, what the lol. Just clicking on that song to link it made my heart start beating and really took me back. I can go on and on and on. I was there for 2 years, and this doesn't even scratch the surface of all of the weird. When did I find out? Like 10 years later when I really started thinking about it. It all felt totally normal, and I just remembered friends and stuff. That's the scary part. This was not normal, and to all the CDU kids in here, sorry. You were in a cult. Just really take a minute to think about it. All of the weird sayings, the agreements, the smoosh piles, the bands, the raps, the jumpsuits, the repetitive music, the scrolls, the workshops, the monitored phone calls, the mandatory positivity letters, the outlets, the peace talks, the inner circles, all of it. And this was all Synanon. That's not even including the Profits, my dudes. I still have my Profit journal around here somewhere. Let me update this in a bit. Edit. Some other things. Disclosure circles. We had a thing called raps, where we would sit in a circle for 312 hours 4 times a week and just share, or get yelled at, or have to rat other kids out. Disclosure circles were like raps on crack, and they lasted up to 6 hours. That's where the staff would have to share stuff about themselves, too. I learned that one of the staff, an unconscious girl who drank too much, so that was nice. None of the staff there had any kind of certification or degree, or was qualified to teach therapy to kid. I don't even think you had to have a high school diploma, and this was North Idaho, in the middle of the woods. At the end of the 5th Profit, staff and your friends would hold you down as you struggled to get up, and it would give you this weightless feeling, and they held you up to a light afterwards. That was your rebirth, as you shed your shadow self away. You looked back at your shadow and told it goodbye, and then it was someone else's turn. Edit. The shadow self is something that was connected to the first Profit. You had to draw an ugly image of yourself and then face a wall and stare at it. Also, during that Profit, you had to put your head between your legs and scream out confessions at the floor. If you couldn't think of anything, you just had to scream at the top of your lungs. There were only about 14 kids to a peer group, so imagine a room full of 14, 17-year-olds just screaming, crying, and yelling out the most horrible things that had happened to them while staff paced around them, making sure they did a good job. Again, I can go on and on. Another edit. They were able to keep you there until you were 22 if you were enrolled when you were underage. One of my best friends there was there for 4 years. If only you can see how just utterly lost he is right now. I'm afraid to even reach out because he's so far gone. Last edit. Thanks for the gold and all that. Just remember that this is still going on as you read this, and not a damn thing is going to be done about it. This is just CDU, and there are countless other schools out there way worse. Hell, in Provo Canyon, if you really screw up, you get sent to its expansion in Guatemala, and parents are on board with that because the schools all seem so caring to the naive and ill-informed. What else can you do, except let people know? Story 4 from user deleted. My brother-in-law joined the Mormon church years ago. He decided to go on a mission trip, and the restrictions on when he could talk to family made him realize it was more of a cult than he thought. I don't remember the specifics, but he was allotted minimal time for phone calls, all emails to us were monitored, and he couldn't come home for holidays. The whole ostracizing you from your family and friends was a red flag for him. He didn't leave right away, but he started using it for socialization and networking for employment. When he wasn't around Mormons, he drank alcohol and coffee and had sleep. I was around a lot of Mormons when we lived near him, and they made it very clear the purpose of their friendliness was to convert. They invited me to a class at the church that was free. A few weeks in, they messaged me to talk about God. I declined politely, and within a week, they no longer offered the class. They all stopped talking to me once they knew I would not convert. Thanks to everyone who watched to the end. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.